Welcome. It is where I am a beautiful day. I hope it's a good day where you are. Welcome to this gathering. This is the final of 3 workshops in our series for such a time as this, which have been workshops gathering us around resilience and moving forward. We were thrilled to have MaryAnn with us a few weeks ago as we looked at improvisation. I know a number of you were there. Yes, I will say that Fred Milligan is calling in from Brussels, and that's exciting, Fred. Yep, you weren't able to be with us for improv, were you? Were you there for improv?
I was. I saw it on recording.
Okay, all right, good. Well, this is live Fred from Brussels, so this is a record for us. And we suspect some people will be coming in and out. We know that's the way this works. So welcome. Let me, for those of you who don't remember or who weren't with us the last time, let me tell you a little bit about who MaryAnn McKibben Dana is. She is a writer and a pastor, speaker, and ministry coach who lives in Virginia. MaryAnn is the author of God, Improv, and the Art of Living, which I would highly recommend to you. And also 2012 Sabbath in the Suburbs. She's written a lot of blogs, essays, articles beyond that. She's been profiled on PBS's Religion and Ethics News Weekly for her work on Sabbath, and was also recognized, we're thrilled that this happened, recognized by the Presbyterian Writers Guild with the 2015-2016 David Steele Distinguished Writer Award. MaryAnn appears across the church, Presbyterian and beyond, and she works with Next Church, local church. She is here, and she is very much someone who reflects both the churches we know and the churches we don't know, because she's a little more broadly than many of us. Today, we're going to spend some time with her looking at design thinking, which, as MaryAnn and I spoke about this, is something that's going to be a new way of thinking for some of us that will help us perhaps unclutter these COVID fogged brains as we begin to move to a time that is going to look a little different than the one we've been in. And so let me open us with prayer, and then MaryAnn, you can have the con. Gracious God, you are always with us, and you have been with us in the seasons past. You are with us now, and you are with us as we look ahead in the seasons to come. We pray your blessing upon all those who gather today and who will gather in the future, as Fred remembers on recording, to hear this word that is perhaps a guide for us in these days. We pray for MaryAnn as she walks with us and leads us. Bless those who intended to be here and may have struggles and not be able to be here. Bless those who are on our hearts this day. Help us to focus with joy, open hearts and minds to your language that we might hear so loudly and clearly today. In Christ's name, amen. MaryAnn.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to our friend in Belgium. It's so good to have all of you here. And I see some familiar faces and names, including church that I used to serve. I see several from the staff there, and I want to give you all a shout out. As we begin, thank you, Sue, for opening us in prayer. I wanted to give you all a chance just to check in and chat, and please do make frequent use of chat and comments. This is a long period of time to be on Zoom, and just so you know, we will take a 10-minute break near the top of every hour. So you will have an intentional time to step away and stretch. I told the improv group to do a little dance during the break. You're invited to do that as well, but at least just to move your body and give your eyes a little bit of a rest from looking at a screen. This will also be very participatory. There will be times that you will do some things in pairs, and I'll say more about that in a minute. But for now, if you wouldn't mind just checking in with where you're from, and where you are in space, and just say a good morning to those of you, to everyone else on this call through the comments in the chat. And I would love to kind of know where folks are located. So in addition to Fred, who's already shared. Welcome. several Pennsylvania, somebody up early in California, Pittsburgh, Presbytery of the James. Yep, Arlington, Burke, several from Burke Presbyterian Church, which was my first call after seminary. Still the church that ruined me for every other church, just the best church. Great, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Northumberland Presbytery, Presbytery of Lake Erie. Nice to see you again. I was in Lake Erie, Erie Presbytery a couple of years ago. Thanks, Arlene. Great, good. Well, let's do one more little kind of sharing in chat of just a word or phrase that kind of either just a little prayer or kind of what you're bringing into this space, you know, tired, happy, whatever, just kind of, you know, so that I kind of get a sense of what we're bringing here. What's just a one word prayer or one phrase check in. All right, great. You can keep those coming. And like I said, I won't always see the chat, but I want you all to participate in it, and to the extent that I see it, and I will work on being able to view it as we go along. I will be responding in as much as I am able, and that is a very helpful treasure trove. People share links, ideas. What I'm going to share with you, as Sue said, it may be kind of a new way of thinking, but it also may be a very familiar way of thinking. If you were with me a couple weeks ago for the improv stuff, you know that one of the things that I say is that we are all improvising all the time. And hopefully what I shared in that workshop and later in the recording is that just some tools for doing it more mindfully, more intentionally. Many of us maybe don't consider ourselves naturals at that, but we end up living in the world where things don't go according to plan and we need to find our way. And I think that, you know, having some language and some tools to really think about that in a more mindful way can be very helpful. And that's what today is about as well. I remember the first time I really delved into design thinking in an intentional way was at a workshop at the Next Church conference a few years ago, the one in Seattle, and was taught by a friend of mine, Ken Hood, with whom I have led workshops and coaching cohorts around design thinking. And I remember he came in with his co-leader and he said, all right, we'll give you all a choice. We can play a game where you will learn design thinking in an interactive, participatory way, or we will stand up here and we will kind of lecture at you all and tell you what design thinking is. And so like all these hands go up like, let's do the participatory thing. And I remember catching the eye of a friend of mine who is a fellow member of National Capital Presbytery. And I could tell we were both thinking the same thing, which was, can we have the lecture, please? And so what I want to tell you all is that we're going to have a little bit of both. I'll be doing a lot of talking and sharing of ideas and approaches and tools that you can use. And you also are going to be doing some practice. And I will say more about that in a minute, but there's going to be a little bit of both. So if you're feeling like, you know, it's Monday, she's asking me to engage and not just passively listen. Yes, that is true. But also I hear you and I hear that. And what I'm going to share with you will be what you will be doing with one another is very bite-sized piece kinds of things. And the goal is to learn the model, not to produce some kind of great product. So we'll talk more about how that will go in a minute. But first I wanted to kind of set the stage with you all a little bit. I saw some people checking in that they were COVID tired. And so I want to share just to start this blessing that has been meaningful to me and I've gone back to again and again over the past year since it was first shared in the On Being blog. And this is from John O'Donohue. For one who is exhausted, a blessing. And just let this wash over us for a minute, and then we will dive in. When the rhythm of the heart becomes hectic, time takes on the strain until it breaks. Then all the unattended stress falls in on the mind like an endless increasing weight. The light in the mind becomes dim. Things you could take in your stride before now become laborsome events of will. Weariness invades your spirit. Gravity begins falling inside you, dragging down every bone. The tide you never valued has gone out, and you are marooned on unsure ground. Something within you has closed down, and you cannot push yourself back to life. You have been forced to enter empty time. The desire that drove you has relinquished. There is nothing else to do now but rest and patiently learn to receive the self you have forsaken in the race of days. At first, your thinking will darken and sadness take over like listless weather. The flow of unwept tears will frighten you. You have traveled too fast over false ground. Now your soul has come to take you back. Take refuge in your senses, open up to all the small miracles you rushed through. Become inclined to watch the way of rain when it falls slow and free. Imitate the habit of twilight, taking time to open the well of color that foster the brightness of day. Draw alongside the silence of stone until its calmness can claim you. Be excessively gentle with yourself. Stay clear of those vexed in spirit. Learn to linger around someone of ease who feels they have all the time in the world. Gradually, you will return to yourself, having learned a new respect for your heart and the joy that dwells far within slow time. Amen, and thanks be to God. There was a line in here. Let me see if I can find where it was. Things you could take in your stride before now become laborsome events of will. Sue and I were talking before the recording began about how the kind of, maybe you've heard this kind of conventional wisdom that we're kind of working, our 100% right now is about 80%. And she was saying, and I was hearing this also with my coaching clients, that it's even less right now for a lot of people. And if that's where you are, welcome, invite you into this space. And what I hope that this will be is not yet another model, yet another paradigm, another set of tools that kind of can make our toolbox feel so heavy that we can't even carry it around. But I like to think of design thinking, and when I work with clients and with sessions and visioning teams, and we introduce these tools, I like to think of it as a sensibility. If it feels too much to say, I'm gonna sort of, now I have to learn a whole new thing, to think about it as a mindset, as a way of looking at our work. And for those of you who were with me a couple of weeks ago who have engaged the improv stuff, it is along that kind of same vein of really being much more thoughtful and present in the work that we are currently doing, and a way of moving forward when things seem really, really uncertain and we could go in so many different directions, and what does the future even look like? And I hope this will be helpful to you. But one more kind of setting the table kind of thing, and then we will get into design a little more in depth, is many of you maybe when pandemic first started also ran across this wonderful article from the Praxis Journal, which writes for church leaders and church audiences, and really a series of metaphors that I have found really helpful again and again of kind of what we're facing right now. On one level, when the pandemic started, it was kind of like a blizzard, like we need to get ready. People went to the grocery store and stocked up on toilet paper, all of these sorts of things to like, we need to weather this immediate thing that is happening. But it's not just a blizzard, it's more than a blizzard. And it's also a winter, it's a season that we are in right now. it's not just kind of weathering this immediate snowstorm and then the thaw happens, but it's and I think I remember when that kind of started to dawn on people. Oh, we'll just, we'll lock down for a couple weeks and then, we'll sort of come out. No, this was a much longer season than any of us anticipated, but it's not just a winter either. It's also, according to Praxis Journal, and I would agree, and I think a lot of people are feeling this too, is it's like a mini ice age, right? That there are some things, when winter ends, spring comes, and you sort of go on in that cyclical way, but ice age suggests that there is some fundamental things that will be different. And this will be with us in some way for a really long time. And given that kind of long time horizon, it can feel very overwhelming. You've probably saw, just as I did a couple of weeks ago, the Gallup poll, right, that said, less than half of Americans identify as any kind of religion. That has been going for a long time. And so in some ways, pandemic highlighted that, or maybe accelerated that. What does that mean for us? Let me just show you kind of in a high level way with just this graphic of what design thinking is. And you can read, I'm not going to get into, frankly, I don't know a whole lot about the history of it other than it has been used in all kinds of settings, in corporate settings, when people are designing products for customers. It's used a lot in social, kind of nonprofit settings and kind of in social kind of issue-based settings as well, and increasingly in the church as well. So here is where we are going today. And this is, Stanford has done a lot of work through their D School in kind of helping train people in design thinking. There's tons of books out there. I will tell you my favorite book, and I will just let you take a look at it, is called Designing Your Life. And this is a way, this is a personal based design thinking process. So if you're thinking about what kind of job you want to have, or is it time to retire, or what kind of community do I want to live in, it's taking design principles and applying them to the personal. And I think it's one of the best kind of introductions to design. So here's where we're headed, and you can see there are 5 movements. But the wonderful thing about design is it's constantly cycling through. So the empathy phase is really the first step. You define kind of what you're going to be working on based on what you learned during that empathy building process. The ideating is when you're generating as many ideas as possible and suggestions. And if you've done your work in empathize and define, and really defining as carefully as you can what you're trying to do, the ideating phase goes much more smoothly. And then the real beauty of, in addition to empathy, I think the 2 things, these last 2 stages, prototype and test, are really the heart of design thinking. And what it is encouraging is frequent iterations. As quickly as you can, you want to come up with a prototype that's very small, that you can test, and then you come back around, you do some empathy work of like, how did that feel? And then you refine. So you all, I mean, this is why I say that design thinking is a sensibility, because you all have probably been doing a lot of this and maybe not calling it these things, or maybe you haven't done it very much and you're like, oh, we've gotten, we rolled out this Zoom program for children, and then realized that children had been on screens all day long in school and didn't want to be on screens again. And that might be because you didn't do a lot, maybe you didn't do enough empathy work, or you didn't realize that, or you had to go through the prototype and learn that, and then you realize that you need to pivot and do something different. So if you tried things that didn't work, that doesn't mean you did it wrong. That means you're doing design work if you can then adjust based on what you learned by what didn't work. So the best way, as I said, to really learn the tools is to interact with them. And I want to kind of give you 2 cautionary notes before we start, because you're going to get into pairs for a little bit of interviewing. We're going to just dive right into empathy. First, we're going to be guided by Yoda, who says, do or do not, there is no try. We are just going to as best we can with whatever energy you have today. Some of you might be like feeling tired, or some of you may be ready to go. Just bring whatever you can to this, because what we are working on is not a product. What I want you to experience today is not, I'm going to design something that is going to meet my partner's need. What you are doing right now is learning the model. That is the goal, okay? So those of you who have the perfectionist streak, as I do as well, your gold star comes from learning the model, okay? Not from getting the process right or performing with perfection this thing that you are just now learning. Your goal is to learn the model. So we're going to temper Yoda with just dive in. There is no try, there's just do. With the other side of that, which is T.S. Eliot, says there is only the trying, the rest is not our business. Now, I think those two are the same idea, right? And they're very, I think, very designy. The idea of we just put it out there, and what we have for today is good enough. We just leave the rest. Maybe T.S. Eliot wouldn't put it this way, but we know we leave the rest to the Holy Spirit, right? Okay, so with those two things said, I know that Mike is behind the scenes ready after I give instruction to put you all in pairs. You're going to be in pairs for about 8 minutes. Let me make sure that's right. Yeah. So I want you to think for a minute before we go into groups, because I want you, to kind of prime the pump a little bit. We are going to go through a design process, and what we are designing for one another is, I want you to think about the idea, the practice of giving gifts. We all have to give gifts at Christmas time, people's birthdays. We maybe do, birthday cards for people at Valentine's Day, Easter, whatever. Some of us find that really easy. Some of us find that more challenging. Some of us maybe have somebody that we find it really hard to give gifts for because they already have everything. Or maybe we don't give gifts because we are trying to not buy as much and consume as much stuff. What you are going to do is you are going to design for your partner. You are going to redesign the gift giving experience. So as you are thinking about going into this interview, and this is a process that Stanford has developed, so I'm using their materials with these simulation pieces. Think about an aspect of the gift giving experience that you find difficult or unsatisfying or just a challenge for whatever reason. I did this early on with a group. I've done this numerous times with different groups, all on Zoom. So you're not the first to have done this. And I was actually paired with this person. She said, I don't have any issues. My husband and I don't give gifts to one another. We like that. And it was like, I'm really glad I was paired with her because there was very little to go, very little place to go with that. So if that is you, great. Maybe make something up or kind of lean into, think about a family member who has a difficult time with this. So give your partner something to work with, even if you need to kind of think a little more expansively about what you're doing. So what you're going to do is you need some paper for this because you're going to be taking notes. You are going to redesign the gift giving experience for your partner. That's where we're headed over the next couple of hours. But the first thing, all you're going to do right now is just gain empathy. So you are going to interview your partner, and we're going to give you a warning when it's time to switch. You only have 8 minutes, so you're doing 4 minutes each per person. Think about the last time you gave a gift. Who did you give it to? Was it difficult to find or give this gift? What was meaningful about it? How did you come up with the idea? So just think in terms of stories and experiences that you have. Take note as you're interviewing your partner for things you find interesting. Look at body language. We are gaining empathy here. So just listen for understanding, listen for the kind of emotional impact of what the person is saying. Okay, and then you will switch. If you're taking notes, and you can kind of just imagine that you're filling in that block number 1, and just fill in some notes. Okay. Before Mike sorts us into groups, are there questions that you have about what we are doing right now? We are just in stage 1 of the interview. Okay, and feel free to ask questions as the person is talking, and just fill in some notes. Any questions about process? either type them in chat or unmute yourself and speak up.
Is the gift for the person we are interviewing?
Good question. No. So imagine the person you're interviewing is a gift giver. So they have people in their life that they have to, or not have to, but they routinely maybe give gifts to. And gifts can be words of affirmation. Gifts can be time spent with the person. It doesn't have to be a thing you go to the store and buy. That's going to be driven by your interview. Like some people, you'll listen for kind of where they go. So does that make sense? Does that answer your question? I hope so. And if not, your partner can maybe help guide you. Okay, any other questions? All right, so you're going to be in groups for 8 minutes, and we'll make sure to give you a note when it's time to switch. Good luck. And if you need anything, I think you all can summon the host. So if you need to ask a question, let me know. And enjoy. Sort of process notes as we wait for everybody else to come back.
Yeah, Ethelyn and I thought we were going to be given a signal to switch.
Right.
There was one.
There was one, yeah.
Oh, didn't see it.
It pops up.
We did.
Sometimes if you're not looking, you can miss it.
Yeah,
I was
well, we
paying too
certainly-
much attention to
certainly missed
Ethelyn.
it was also in the very top
Mm.
ribbon at
Yeah.
the top of the screen.
We had already
Easy to
switched.
miss.
Oh,
And then
good.
the thing came to switch. So we
You're
just
like, oh
sort of
no.
elaborated a bit.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for doing that. Check in with yourself. How are you feeling? And just, breathe a minute. We're going to go into those exact same groups again. If you have questions process-wise, now is the time to ask them. I'm going to give you just a little bit of time right here in the big group to think about what you've heard. But I see David unmuted. David, did you have something you
I
wanted
was
to
going
say?
to say that we 100% made that up as we were going along. So I have
Excellent.
no idea if we're going in the right direction, but we had a
Okay.
good chat.
Did you talk about gift giving?
We did.
All right. What you're going to do now, and put some questions in chat if you are, if you need to, or reflections about that. It's not a lot of time, right? It's not a lot of time. When you're gaining empathy, you hope you are not rushed. And we're spending 8 minutes on something, and really 4 minutes per person is not enough time. I understand that. Take a minute, and I'm going to stop talking and give you all some silence just to reflect on what you heard. And let me share my screen again, because we are going to go on to stage 2. You're going to just talk to the same person again and dig a little deeper. Think about feelings, emotion, some stories perhaps. Why is a really good question. Tell me more about. So I'm going to give you just a minute or so to think about what you want to ask your partner when you get back into your small groups. And we will again, well, let me stop talking, give you all a chance to just jot down some notes. All right, Mike is going to put you in those same groups again. I know we had a couple of late attendees who hopped into a group, so there's a couple groups of 3. Just, one of you can observe, and while the other 2 sort of engage in this together, or if you have time, you can take turns with all 3 of you. But you're going to dig deeper, 6 minutes. So 3 minutes each. Be looking at your screen because there's the time to switch is, it flashes up on the screen briefly. But go through that process again and just see what you can learn. What were you curious about? Design thinking is really built on curiosity. So what are you curious about your partner and how they engage in the giving of gifts? And we will come back in about 6 minutes. So, all right. So you all are, and I understand this is really hard because we're church people. So we like to be around. I mean, we want to hear people's stories, and it's extremely difficult what I'm asking you all to do because I'm asking you to do it in a very little amount of time. So for those of you who may be like, I do not know if I know enough about this person to suggest something for them, it is okay. What is our goal? To learn the model. Okay. So set all that aside for a minute, what you've heard. We're going to come back to that. We're going to spend some time in this big group for a little while and talk about empathy more generally. Again, this is the first stage of design, and I think it is one of the most distinctive features of design thinking because it is not about analyzing the market in a kind of, if you think about designing for companies in a kind of very clinical way, it really is about a human-centered process. And that's why I think it's so fitting for churches and for similar organizations is we don't want to think of our members or people in our community as units that we serve. They're humans. They have stories. They have feelings, and so the empathy stage is really about evoking those feelings. And when I've shared this process with groups over a period of time, and on the last session, I've said, what of this really is the stickiest? What piece is going to stick with you the most? What I hear most often is starting with empathy. We know that it is where we begin, but we often don't, we forget. We just go straight to, we need to do something. We need to take action. And really understanding on a deeper empathic level where people are is just, it's vital. And having people feel heard, being able to tell their stories. How do we do that in a grand scale? The easiest way the sort of simplest form of gathering empathy is just what you all did with an interview. It's just a conversation. But how does that scale to larger kinds of groups? That's the trick. And I'm going to share a couple of tools with you. These are all available in various places online. But as you are, let me put my email in chat. As you are doing this, yes, it would be easier if our congregations were widgets. And sometimes when it's like we get empathy fatigue, right? But let me give you my email as you're going along and you're like, where do I find these kinds of tools kind of explained more? There are 3 kind of basic levels of ways of building empathy in what I've seen. The first is called a contextual inquiry. And this is seeing people in their natural setting. So this is kind of hard to do during a pandemic, but think about observing children in a Sunday school class or youth on a mission trip. You are paying attention to what they are doing and how they are interacting with the world around them. And then you ask questions. I think about, this is not an example of how I've seen design used, but I think about the food pantry at my kids' high school. They allow people to come in and shop for what they need. The shelves are stocked and people kind of just fill a basket with what their family needs. I can imagine a contextual inquiry where you walk with someone, you tell them that's what you're going to do, but you see, where do they go first? Where does the hand go? What do different kinds of people fill their basket with so that you know what you need to stock the pantry with? And how do you help that experience be as welcoming as possible, as upholding of dignity as possible, from check-in until checkout, right? That's a contextual inquiry, is seeing people in that setting. A cultural probe is a way of gathering feedback over time. So I think, for example, about a multi-week Bible study. You might assemble kind of a packet where people have the materials, and over time they sort of take notes on, what the experience was like on that day. So it's just a kind of a manila folder or with questions in it, so that they are giving feedback over a longer period of time. And so that's a way to kind of gather some of this analysis so you can work with it. The third is the simplest form, and this is what you all did, which was the participatory interview. Let me say a little bit quickly about how to ask good questions in these kinds of interviews. When you are asking people, so let's say, for example, we want to think about what is our hybrid worship experience going to be like, or what is our worship post-COVID going to be like? Let's not define it in a particular way. We don't want to suggest answers to our questions. Even if somebody pauses and they're not sure the answer, you don't want to help them out by saying, well, what about this? Because then you are doing that work for them. And if you really want to gain their what they really think, just let the silence be there, which is very, very difficult. But see if you can discipline yourself to do that. And that's very helpful for good design work. Look for inconsistencies. This is not in a gotcha sort of way, but you talked about how important this is, and yet you also said this. Tell me about that. I mean, we are complex people and we can hold contradictory views of things, but you can learn something interesting about someone who says, I don't like receiving gifts, that people buy for me. And yet that person buys most of their gifts, and that's their gift giving language. That's an interesting thing to probe. What is that about? Beware of nonverbal cues. Many of us have kind of been trained in that in ministry training. Follow the path of a question, kind of where it leads, and then don't feel like you have to get through the list of questions that you've prepared. Follow where your curiosity goes, and why is really your friend. I see we're running up on 11, and I'm going to give you a couple of, no, I'm going to go ahead and give you a break now, and then we will finish up with empathy, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So I want to make sure, because this, it's hard to be on Zoom for a long period of time, that I want to give you adequate time. It's about 10:57 Eastern time. We're going to go ahead and take a full 10 minutes. We'll come back at 11:07. And we will finish up with empathy. We'll move into the define stage, and we'll just kind of keep going from there. You'll do just a couple more things in these small groups, but then we'll be doing some things in the large group too. So we will see you back here. Go ahead and feel free to turn off your video, just step away, and I will start promptly at 11:07. So we'll see you then. Let's dive back in. Remember, we are on, let me give you a bird's eye view again. So we're still talking empathize. I've given you a couple of kind of quick, ways of thinking about how we gather this empathy on scale. Just a brief word about surveys. We love surveys in the church. I hope that you can see ways in which surveys can only give you a piece of the picture. If you are really seeking to build empathy for your congregants or empathy for your community that you're trying to serve, a survey is only going to get you so far. Maybe it helps you refine the questions that you ask, but if people are rating your VBS or your worship online on a scale of 1 to 5, and you give them a little blank, you're really painting with just a few colors, right? You don't kind of get the depth of understanding. And the other thing that I think, when I said the groups that I worked with really gravitated to empathy, is this is a really life-giving process, or can be, in this process of storytelling. Those of you who have served as interim pastors, that process of kind of talking about who we are, and when that's done in a kind of really trustful way, is really people who've served on PNCs, and a lot of that is building empathy and really working well as a team, and learning one another's stories, and what drives us as a church, and what are we looking for. Those are all kind of empathy oriented activities. I'm spending a lot of time on this stage because it's important, but also, when people feel heard, they're going to go further with you, even if what you are ultimately proposing isn't quite what they have in mind. So a few other kind of quick tools to share with you. Many of you may remember these old family circus cartoons where you have the kid that just kind of goes all over the place. One of the other tools that you can do to really build empathy is called experience mapping, and it's a similar kind of process. So thinking about what the average person has to go through, for example, to come to church on Sunday morning. Let's think non-pandemic times, right? Think about a family. They have to get out of bed. They have to get the kids up. If they have children at home, they have to get them dressed, get in the car, drive. They pass a bunch of Starbucks where they're thinking, oh, maybe I could stop there instead and have a kind of quiet morning. They get to church. They have to park. What does the signage look like? What doors are open? What doors do you keep locked but are non-obvious in terms of not a real entrance? All of those kinds of things, and taking yourself through that and imagining, for example, a new person who isn't familiar with the norms of your church. What are they experiencing? How are they feeling at various stages of this process? Can really help you understand people on a deeper level. I did this with a group of educators a couple of years ago. And I said, imagine a family in your church, and they go through, what is it like for them on Sunday morning? And one of the women there said, our nursery is really, really far away from our sanctuary. And so we have people who kind of come in late to worship, and people kind of, look around, and some people sort of, feel like that's disruptive. But she said, I realize that they are on time at church, but it takes time for them to get their kids settled in the nursery and then walk all the way to be in church. And so it just helped her understand on a deeper level, like what that process is actually like. So going through an experience mapping, you can also do this in something that's called a journey map. And that is actually have the people fill this out for themselves. And so you can see on your screen, you have time and you have emotion. So what you do, and what I'm going to show you is an example from an airport. The person would sort of graph what they have done at various stages in time and how they feel at each stage in the process. So you can see here, they get to the curbside and they're feeling panicked because do we have everything? And then they kind of have the ticketing anxiety of waiting in line. They go through security where they feel restless. There's a little dotted line there, and that's when you go from kind of negative to positive emotions. The pretzel shop, they feel good. They got a snack. They feel a little guilty about it. And then they're down in the gift shop again where they feel boredom. And then they're happy because they're departing. So this was from, a group of people who are trying to redesign the airport experience. And they take this document that's created by the customer, by the user, and they're able to ask questions. And you can see the questions there. So you started off low, can you recount that story? What happened before this? Tell me about the pretzel shop. Why did you, feel guilt? What was the pleasure there? All of those things, and understanding that can help you redesign that experience in a way that is more helpful. So think about, I've suggested it. I don't know if anyone's taken me up on having people do this during worship, but I think most pastors' egos probably couldn't take the dip during the boredom of the sermon, perhaps. But hey, if you're feeling brave, give it a try. But let's think of something more neutral, like doing a rummage sale. Maybe you run a big kind of rummage sale at your church. Having the volunteers kind of go through this. When did we really feel like we're never going to get through all of this tagging and pricing of things? How could that be a more life-giving experience? And just mapping experiences through time is another way to do that. Another tool that I'll share with you is known as the what, how, why. And we can just do that with this person on the screen. So this is, again, going back to the airport experience. They have this image of this person who's looks like they're waiting for their flight. So they sort of, you can map this on your page. What are they doing? How are they doing it? And why might they be doing it? Well, they're sitting on their laptop, kind of crouched in the middle of what looks like a hallway. They've got their papers scattered all around them. How do they look to us? They're sort of very intent. I can't tell, maybe they have some headphones in, so they're trying to drown out the outside world. Does that mean that the sounds, the music's too loud, of the shop next door? What could that mean? And why? Why are they sitting on the floor? Are there not enough chairs? Is there no place to plug in the laptop where they would be sitting? So you make some interpretive choices based on what you see. And so that what, how, why process is just kind of making some assumptions that you want to check out, and you want to kind of, in your design and your prototyping, you'll see, well, were we right? If we turn down the music, does that kind of improve the experience, and that sort of thing. So let me stop there, and I'm going to see what kind of questions. Oh yeah, so Joel, this person looks like their flight was canceled. Very possible. Yeah. And what would that, how can we, if that's the case, how do we improve the kind of experience, for people who are having to wait for a long period of time? Let me stop there and just see what kind of questions or observations. We're going to move to the next stage in a minute, but I don't want to leave empathy without giving you all a chance to to talk about that a little bit. So questions, comments about this stage. Also observations about your interviews, if you want to just process that a little bit. Yeah, Fred brings up the point of designing for one another, especially because we are not a business creating something that people buy. We are creating an experience that we all participate in, whether we are staff, whether we are pastors, whether we are choir members, whether we are children. We are all participating in this process together. So I think that's helpful language, and it speaks to the materials that I'm using. Many of them are designed for a different kind of a group. But any other comments or sort of questions? All right. Yeah, so these models help define the right questions. In fact, that's a great segue into our next stage, which is define. Now, let me say a little something about define before we go any further. There's a lot of language in design thinking around problem. We have a problem to solve. What is the actual problem that we are trying to take action on? And that can sometimes land weird with church people, especially pastors, because we go to seminary and we take pastoral care classes, and we know it's not our job to solve people's problems. It's our job to accompany people. It's our job to be present. It's our job to maybe provide spiritual wisdom so that people can kind of find their way into the way forward when difficult things happen. And so if that is feeling like a block to you, maybe think about problem in a different way. Think about it as an offering. What are we offering to one another? What solution or proposal or ministry are we trying to create? What experience are we seeking to offer people? So if this problem feels like a block, because we're going to move into define now. Let me go back to my slides. Go back to your notes from your interview, and you are going to move to, you've heard your partner hopefully talk. If you're in a group of 3, maybe you weren't able to get to everyone, and that's okay. Just pick one person that was in your group. And you are going to move towards defining a solution for that person. Now, they may have said, I don't have a problem, in which case just kind of do your best and make something up. Again, we're learning the model here. So the thing you're going to do here is we're starting to reframe, and you're starting to make some interpretive choices in terms of what you heard. So look at stage 3 on your screen. Goals and wishes. What is your partner trying to achieve through the gift giving that they shared with you, the stories that they shared? Okay. Use some verbs. What are they trying to accomplish? What values are they seeking to express? Might be another way to put that. And then if there are any additional insights, new learnings about your partner's feelings and motivations, what do you see maybe that they don't see? Again, you're making choices here, and they may not be right. Because design thinking is an iterative process, you may capture some findings and you're going to go back to your partner, or think about this on a broader scale. Oh, people really want outdoor worship this summer at 5 p.m. On the lawn. You're making an interpretive choice there that they are then going to be able to give you feedback on, but you've got to take a stand. that's this stage of the define process is really, I'm going to make a choice, put it out there and see what happens. And you do the best you can with the empathic kind of information that you have. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes to just jot down, what do you think your partner's goals and wishes are? And any insights that come up. And we're still on the left side of your page here. So goals and wishes and insights. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes just to write those down. You're going to do something with this. So just take some time to jot some things down. And if you're done with stage 3, go ahead and move to stage 4. And here's where you really, in fact, everybody just take a deep breath. This feels hard for those of us, especially we perfectionists who want to make sure that we are right, especially with this exercise where you had such little time. I understand I'm setting up a little bit of a failure trap for you. But what you're going to do here, this is, remember, we're learning the tools that we then use on a larger scale, and we would have much more time to kind of delve into the empathy. But let's, here we are taking a stand with a point of view. We are making a statement. Jane needs a way to show her appreciation for her session because they have gone above and beyond the call of duty this year. Or Arthur needs a way to express his care for his friends, but he thinks about that a lot, but he doesn't always do something with it. Like he kind of keeps it up in his head. Okay, so take a stand. And again, if you feel like you didn't get quite enough from your partner, just make something up. Again, we're just learning here. So just throw something out there. And take a minute or so to finish that up. And give you about 1 more minute to finish up some notes and thoughts. And if you are stuck at this point, put a question in comments or just go ahead and unmute and All right. Did I hear a question starting to be articulated? Okay. All right, so let's talk a little more about define. Love this quote from Einstein, who said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. I say this quote a little advisedly to Presbyterians because we love studying things. We love talking about things, and sometimes we can get stuck in that phase forever. The point is that we are moving towards again, I'm going to use the problem language, even though problem is problematic, because the definition of a problem in design thinking is it is something that is actionable. It is something that we can take action on. And often where we get stuck, I think, in the church is we define things as problems that aren't actually problems, in the sense that they aren't actionable. And what those are known as gravity problems in design thinking. So I mentioned earlier that Gallup poll that less than 50% of Americans identify as any particular religious tradition. That is a gravity problem, because that is not actionable by your congregation. That is a circumstance of American life, okay? What are you going to do about that percentage? You need to define your problem in a more specific way, in a more focused way. And again, you can throw out problem language. What does that mean for your mission as a church? You are not probably going to change the gradual collapse of Christendom that has been happening for centuries, okay? That is gravity. In fact, in design language, they talk about wicked problems. That is a wicked problem that has been with us for a very, very long time. Another example, I think of a gravity problem. Most of our members are in their 70s and 80s. Okay, that is gravity. That is a circumstance of your ministry that you are working with. So you need to define that in a different way. So the solution, when we are faced with, and I think that's why a lot of times in our sessions and in our teams, we talk about the same things over and over and over again. I'm going to pick on Burke because there are 3 members of staff on this call. And I used to serve as an associate pastor there. We would talk for years about how we had this university that was just 10, 15 minutes away from our church campus. We've got this untapped potential here. We really should do something about that. But we never could, I think, when I was there, get past thinking about it as just part of the gravity. So George Mason University is 15 minutes away. Okay, what does that mean? How do we define that in a way that is actionable? And if something is holding us back, most of our members are in their 70s and 80s. That doesn't have to hold you back. We just accept that as a given. That is just the reality that we are working within. So how do we define our mission and our ministry differently given that? That doesn't mean that we don't reach out to people who may be younger, or maybe we reach out to the people who are the same age. But exactly, Nick, this is describing reality. And thank you for tying that into what we talked about last time. In fact, I think I shared with you all the serenity prayer, which to me is the improviser's prayer. But for me, when I think about gravity problems, I think about, this is just the reality that we are living within. And I think where we got, think about early in the pandemic, we were very, sort of struggling with wanting to be back together again, wanting to be in person. And that's a gravity issue. It was not safe to be together. So thinking about that and knowing where the difference is, what can we actually, yes, you get bonus points, Nick. So thinking about not defining something as a problem that's not a problem, but just a circumstance of your life and your ministry. The other one that I think also gets us stuck is what is known as anchor problems. Anchor problems are problems or issues, conundrums, challenges. If you don't like the problem language, substitute your own. But it's defined in a way that presupposes the solution. So, for example, I did it a little bit earlier as in an example. we need to plan a hybrid worship experience for our church. Do we? Is that what we need to do? That presupposes the solution that the solution is hybrid worship, and maybe it isn't. Maybe the way we need to express that is we need to find a worship experience that meets the needs of our members now, which may not be hybrid. It may be something else. When we define an anchor problem, it prevents motion, because if we don't have those things in place, then we can't move forward. So let me give you an example that's kind of a kind of personal example, and it's from Designing Your Life. One of the people in that book talks about, he had this wonderful workshop in his house, like a 2-car garage that he converted into like a wood shop and a place he could work on his cars, all these sorts of things. And then when he moved to a new house, he didn't have that 2-car garage. And so he took 5 years, and he's like, oh, I don't have a workshop. I really miss that. I need to create a new one. But what he had in his mind was the image of the 2-car garage. And because he didn't have that, he couldn't move forward, because he was anchored by this idea of what workshop looks like. And when he finally was able to let go of that and say, well, I don't have that, but I do have space in my yard for a little shed. Maybe I could buy a shed and make it look different. It doesn't look like it did before. He had been anchored by this image. And as I think about what the next several months of ministry are going to look like, and even a year from now, I feel like this is probably the biggest challenge for us right now, is we are anchored by what we believe church looks like based on what it used to look like. And a lot of it may look like that again, but there are probably things that won't look like that. And so how do we make sure that our organizations are not stuck in, this is what it looks like to worship together. This is what it looks like to do mission together. This is what it looks like to serve, to serve children's needs. Think about Sunday school. How do we do Sunday school this year is an anchor. That's anchor thinking. You may get there that Sunday school is the best way to serve people's educational needs, but that is presupposing the solution. Sunday school is the solution. And unless you've gotten there through your empathic kind of exploration, you are anchored, because there may be other ways to meet that need. And so the approach when you are dealing with an anchor problem is to reframe, and to make sure that you are not sneaking in, your solution into the problem itself. Wayne, you want to say more about that? Redefine normal? I think you're onto something there.
Well, folks say we want to go back to normal. Nothing is ever normal. Everything is always changing. And the pandemic has forced some significant changes that we can move forward with, rather than saying, oh, we got to go back to do it the way we always did it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. Yeah, I wrote about this a few weeks ago, and I said, I feel like there will be a kind of normal, but it's the back to part when we hear people talking about back to normal, that I think is an anchor. And does that mean everything is going to be so different that we're not even going to recognize church anymore? I don't think so. But I do think that these tools invite us to think more expansively about what a normal might look like. Yeah, Deborah, you want to say more about that? I like your comment there.
Yeah, I just think this is the exact place where you can ask those questions. What are the things that you miss the most? Because that helps you to define the normal for some people. What are the things that you've really enjoyed about what we've been doing that we didn't have before? Because again, that helps you to define what the new normal probably needs to include. So that's where the survey and the conversation is important right now in defining, before you just decide, oh, I think our congregation needs hybrid. Well,
Mhm.
do they or do they not? You know,
Right.
have you really asked them and talked to them about that? Everyone, you know, you got to make sure you have everyone's input from all those different representative pieces.
And that's also, I think, and Ken Hood, whom I've worked with on in the design thinking cohort with some church leaders, is really good at reminding us that when you do this work of building empathy, you learn what people really value, and things that are sort of low impact or aren't going to have a tremendous sort of, impact on your ministry. Go ahead and, I mean, if not everything needs to be designed, I guess is what I'm saying. There are some things, if they sort of are so sort of technical problem, that technical and adaptive thinking that many of us are familiar with. Some things don't need to be brought through a tremendously kind of complicated design process. Some things are just, they worked before, they're going to work again. We don't really need to disrupt that too much. But other things that really touch a lot of people, have been disrupted very profoundly in the last year. That is where you want to really, I mean, worship is the one, I mean, it's always the one that people kind of go to first, but education, all these other things too. I do want to acknowledge what Susan said about this idea of new normal. And Susan, it could be that the idea of new normal is an anchor also. That why does it need to be normal? What is normal? Does that keep us stuck in kind of trying to do things the same way that we did before? Yeah, the new normal is going to be constantly having to be renegotiated and changing. And thank you for helping contextualize that. Yeah, there's a new life. And I think on the other side of this tremendous traumatic experience that many of us have been through, calling it normal may feel very belittling of the fact that we are in a brand new place. Other comments or questions about that? Really helpful comments. Yes, new life. I do believe we've heard that before. All right, so take a look again. Let me go back here. Take a look again at your kind of point of view statement. And just give it a quick look to make sure that you don't have any gravity or anchor in there as much as possible. And again, I know that we're kind of breezing through these. So make sure there's something there that you can work with, because we're going to move to the next stage here, which is ideating. Ideating is when you are in the idea generation stage, just exactly like it sounds. So what I'm going to give you a few minutes to do is, again, using your point of view statement, that need or that thing that you would like to address in your partner's story, is do just some sketching out, taking some notes, brainstorming, some ways to meet that need, or to here's where I really want you to lean into this. This is an offering. If solution feels a little too, just what might you offer to your partner? The other thing that I would change about this, and again, I'm using this from the Stanford D School, is I would cross out the word radical. At this stage, we are not evaluating the quality of our ideas. We are just generating as many as we can. Okay, so I'm going to give you again a few minutes and just have some quiet to just generate some ideas. You can sketch them as pictures, or you can write them down as using words. Given your point of view statement, this over here on the right side, what would you offer? And at this point, we're going for quantity over quality. I would rather have 5 crummy ideas from you. Not that I would ever judge them that way, but don't worry whether they're good or not. Just worry for quantity at this stage, okay? That's where we get into trouble, as we start to evaluate how good things are. Instead of just saying we need to just generate as much as we can. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute there, give you about 3 or 4 minutes just to sketch some of these out. And again, this is for your partner in your group, and see what you come up with. We're going to go back into those groups. So Mike, in a minute, we're going to have 10 minutes in those groups. Now, here's what we're going to do. This is part 6, if you're looking on your screen. Let me ask you a question. Do you think it's better for you to have completely nailed your partner's needs such that they hear all of these ideas and go, this is great, I love them all? Or is it more useful for them to say, ooh, I really like this one, or this one almost works, except this doesn't quite fit me because of X, Y, and Z? Which is more useful, A or B? B, right? So for those of us who love to be perfectionists and get it right the first time, design can feel challenging, and it's a very different kind of mode of being, because you actually learn more when you offer these ideas. You learn more from the ones that you get wrong than the ones you get right.
Always said that.
Because they say, well, that's not quite it. I mean, it feels good to get it right out of the gate, but you're going to learn more, because the ideating process isn't one and done. You generate some alternatives, you test those, you come back, you go back to the drawing board, you refine those, and it is a constant kind of process of iteration. So it's a little, going back to this slide here, these look like just 5 distinct hexagons, but they really are more like cycles or spirals that kind of repeat. Let's see, we go back here. So you're going to spend 10 minutes in these groups. The other thing I will say, what you're going to do is you're just going to say, here are some ideas that I had that you might incorporate into your gift giving. That's how you can start. And then just share what some of them are, and watch and listen to what they say in response. We know we're all kind people. No one's going to say that was a stupid idea. Please don't do that. I don't imagine anyone would. But say, well, oh, I like that, or that one doesn't fit me as well, or just give them some feedback, and you will just be taking notes as they are giving you feedback. Now, here's one part that's really challenging. Don't explain why you came up with those. Just let the ideas speak for themselves. Well, I heard you say this, and so I was responding to this. First of all, that takes time. We only have 10 minutes. Second, just let the ideas speak for themselves, because maybe you thought they needed this because of this reason, but actually you got the reason wrong, but it's still a great idea, right? So just let the ideas just speak for themselves, okay? So we're going to spend 10 minutes. Mike will give you a time when it's time to switch. I know there's a group of 3, so you either need to just do this for the 3 of you, or one of you can be an observer, or just negotiate with one another how that works. Before I send you all into groups, are there questions that you have about this, what we're doing next? Things you need clarified in the process? All right, so are you ready to go? And remember, what's our goal? Learning the tools, not, this is all kind of imagined and made up, right? And y'all are doing great. So we'll start, we'll go on from there. When you come back, we'll probably take another break. So 10 minutes, and we'll see you back here. Your Synod staff's been doing business while y'all are in your groups. So they're taking good care of you.
They left me out.
No, we were doing therapy about gift giving and Sue.
Yeah, we're welcome back. I would like for you all to just type in chat if you would. What was it like for your partner to make these offerings to you? And just put that in chat. It's a vulnerable thing to share your ideas with someone, and I would love for you all to just offer some affirmations to your partners. Jamie felt listened to. Well, that is a beautiful thing that does not always happen in our polarized world. Arlene says, lovely. Nice. Felt heard. Brenda, that is a good question, the difference between ideating and brainstorming. And I am not sure I know the answer myself. I'm going to give you after our break, and I love these, really interesting, good insights. We'll be doing them. Okay. And we're not even done with the process yet. We began to wonder if what we had discussed fell into category of gravity or anchor. That can be a helpful conversation too. I think that brainstorming is a subset of ideating. Ideating is a larger process of, and I would love if other people have ways of understanding these terms, which are sometimes fungible. But I think that brainstorming is sort of, getting as many ideas down as possible, and ideating may be broader. After our break, I'm going to share some tools for ideating that maybe can think about them more in a sort of in a broader based way. Gentle spirit and offering ideas. Someone cared about my dilemma. Appreciative of practical solutions. Patience and slowing down. Thank you all for sharing that with one another and with your partner. And even in this completely fake, artificial process, people still felt heard, it really tells you something when you do this kind of thing for real out in, thinking about your ministry. People will feel heard in a similar way, even if maybe your ideas weren't quite right. People still feel heard. We're going to take another break, and that'll be our final break before we get back together and go into the last hour with, let me just look at my notes here. We've got a lot of tools for ideation. We're going to talk about prototyping and testing, and then just do some integrating conversation of what are you hearing and where might you go next. So it's 12:01 now. We're going to come back at 12:11. And so take a stretch break, bio break, and we will see you back here then. A few more things about ideate in this stage. I find sometimes that congregations, especially Presbyterian congregations, sometimes people have this mindset of, oh, I'm not creative. This is, hard for me. And sometimes it's hard to get groups into that space. And I remember hearing about a photography professor who, just as an experiment in one of his classes, he divided the group in half. And half of the class, I can't remember where I read this, but half the class was assigned to turn in one photograph that would be kind of judged on its kind of composition, how it was, sort of all of the elements that make a good photograph, but they only had to do one and turn that in for their grade on this particular project. And the other half of the class was asked to submit as many photos as they could. And what he found was that the people who submitted a large number of photographs, their quality was much higher than the group that just had to submit one. And what he surmised from that, and what many people who kind of think about creativity believe about that, is if you free yourself from the perfection of the one and focus, again, like we did in the previous exercise, on just as many ideas as possible, you are freeing up that critical side of your brain from taking over. And one of those ideas that maybe was an outlier turns out to be the one that serves you the best, or you put things together. Again, I want to remind those of you who were with us a couple weeks ago of that kind of, don't feel bad if you're generating some obvious to you ideas. The congregations that you serve months from now will be different in a lot of ways, but if you're really digging into the kind of empathy and the gifts and the values that are there, it's going to be recognizable. It's going to be you all. It's just going to be you all in some new life sort of ways. I want to share some quick tools with you, or approaches to brainstorming or generating ideas that I think can be helpful. The first comes from Edward de Bono, who was a philosopher, consultant, and he came up with the idea of thinking hats. And here's where these two workshops that I've done for you all come together, because Edward de Bono came up with the idea of lateral thought. And what he believed was that our human brains are designed to be very efficient. So once we've come up with an idea, we often feel like we're done, and our brain wants to kind of get to the most efficient solution as quickly as possible. And lateral thinking is what allows us to think beyond the obvious initial kind of first idea and think in some new ways. And the reason why I say this is a full circle with the improv workshop is because my brother-in-law, my husband's younger brother, did improv in college, and the name of his improv group was De Bono. And their phrase was a rich lather of lateral thought. So here is where improv and design come together. But anyway, he had this idea of the thinking hats, and that we are, when we are in a group and we are kind of thinking our way through a problem, that we think about different kinds of things at different times. So we wear these hats, and the idea is that there's a time when we are thinking through a difficult problem that we are in white hat thinking. And then we kind of think about red hat thinking. So it's not like we're all wearing our own favorite hat. It's that we are all in a particular kind of brainstorming space. And I'm going to share what these hats represent in a minute. And here's the kind of a little bit more info. So thinking about the white hat is kind of like white paper. This is where you're really thinking about data and information. What is available to us? What is our test positivity rate in our area? What percentage of people have been vaccinated? Are cases going up or down? That's white paper. Those are the data, the facts. How many people are logging into our worship service? Did it go up or down when we switched from Zoom to Facebook Live? All of these kinds of questions. The red hat is what we put on when we want to think about the intuitive, emotional kind of feelings aspect of what we're working through. This allows, when you're kind of in red hat space and you name that, you say, let's kind of go red hat here for a minute. And how are we feeling about where things are going? How are we feeling about these proposed solutions? Sometimes we discount the red hat because we are actually in white hat space, but we haven't named that. And so we need a place to kind of name the kind of fire and warmth of that. Sunshine is the yellow hat, and that is our most optimistic selves. And I really like the idea of thinking about these as hats, because a lot of us naturally wear one of these hats more than the other. And so say, let's just take that off for a minute and put on another one. And you don't have to be someone other than who you are, but let's just try that for a minute. What if everything went as beautifully as we could imagine? What would that be like? And just let people really, encourage that positive view of things. The black hat is the kind of, think about a stern judge, and that, relates to risk and caution. What might go wrong? Sometimes we really want to tamp down black hat thinking because we think they're kind of killjoys, never want anything to change. And I think it's helpful to think about black hat people or black hat thinking as helping us think through the worst case scenarios. So what if we did this thing and everything went wrong? What would happen? And then how do we keep that from happening? How do we mitigate that risk as much as possible? So it's not like we're letting the black hat sort of douse cold water all over things, but they are lifting up aspects of the idea that maybe need to be listened to. And we need to tend to that. So green is, the kind of rich growth, and that is where you're just generating new ideas, your creative thinking cap. It's really important that you don't have black hat people or black hat thinking going on during green hat thinking, and you can see why that would really tamp things down. I'm seeing, David saying deadlines, practices, rituals, and routines are helpful ways of letting go of perfectionism. So is kind of making sure you're wearing the hat that you need to be wearing at that moment, right? Like now we're just generating ideas. We're not thinking whether they're good or bad. We're not poking holes in them with our black hats on. We're not even in white hat thinking. We're just thinking about what if. And then finally, the blue hat is about process. This is something we have a lot of good elders on our sessions who are wearing the blue hat a lot. I think white and blue are pretty common in our churches. But this is about, all right, we've summarized where we are. What are we doing next? Who is, who's going to do what? The blue hat is also, I think, what session moderators often wear, because maybe they're sensing that we're getting into a lot of red hat territory, and maybe we need to shift into white hat a little bit, or figuring out what hat you need to be wearing. And I've had coaching clients who have taken this idea and they've gotten actual hats, and even done this on Zoom, where like they put on the hat and they say, okay, here's where we are now. And they really, it's really opened up a lot of kind of interesting conversation, and helped people know what we're doing right now. And we're doing that together as a team. And I think that can really be helpful. A lot of times when we are ideating, we're not creating something from scratch. We're really revising or refining something we're already doing. And especially, we're congregations who are already involved in ministry in a variety of ways. So we're tweaking something that already exists. And here's a design tool that can I think be helpful. And to speaking to David's point of kind of rituals and routines, having this acronym can really help, which is called SCAMPER. And so taking something and thinking about how to alter it using these different kind of qualifications or characteristics. So what do we substitute? What could we substitute in this kind of thing to make it different? You all substituted online worship for in-person worship. There's an example. What about combining? What could be combined to think about this in a different way? I have coaching clients who they're colleagues of one another, and they did a sermon series together. So, they're both solo pastors. They don't get a lot of time off from preaching. And so they preached to both congregations online. They just took turns. So they combined those two congregations for one online experience. What can be adapted? What can we adapt and do in a different way? Lots of people did, VBS differently to be online, or they eliminated it altogether. But those who kind of pursued it were like, let's adapt something we've done before, or think about just altering what's there. Modifying is similar. Modify can also stand for minimize or maximize. So what if we just took the thing and made it smaller or made it bigger? And I think about this with online worship a lot. I've noticed that many churches, not all, have their online worship is shorter. So they're kind of minimizing a little bit. They're straining out some of the liturgical actions that don't mean as much online. Putting to another use. I have seen this countless times, and maybe you all have done this. Those of you who may be doing broadcasting worship or did at some point from your home, that bowl turns into a baptismal font, or that wine glass becomes the chalice that you use. So we're putting something to another use. Eliminating, just cutting it all together. Just saying we don't need that right now. And I think that if you've defined your, thinking about getting out of anchor thinking, there are some things that probably can be eliminated in post-COVID ministry. What could those be? Reverse, maybe doing something in a different order. The example that always comes to mind with this is there was a year that Palm Sunday was also April Fool's Day. And I remember that year I decided, just as a nod to April Fools, that I would just do the entire worship service in reverse order. So we actually began with the benediction and blessed people, and then we had the offering and prayers, and the sermon was in there. And then we ended with the call to worship, the call to worship out into the world, to be sent as worshiping people into the drama of Holy Week. So thinking about things in a different order. Now, does everything fit into all 7 of those? No. But as you think about, this ministry that we are doing, and how does it need to change to meet the empathic kind of things we've learned about our people, maybe some of these would help us. Question for the people who were there in the improv group. Did we do the exercise where we were like, how is your church like a article of clothing, or how is your church like? Okay, great. So we're going to do that here. The last tool that I want to share with you for ideating is, I've heard it called King Crab Brainstorm. And in fact, if you really like this stuff, and many of you probably know this book called Thinker Toys, but there are tons and tons and tons of ways to do kind of creative idea generation, brainstorming, all kinds of things. And I believe that this comes from that, but I got it from my friend Ken Hood. But the idea is to put 2 things together that wouldn't normally go together. And this relates to this story that may be apocryphal, where this company was trying to redo its product, and the CEO came in with a picture of a king crab and said, okay, look at the aspects of this king crab. How is our product like the king crab? People said, oh, well, the crab can regenerate its claws. So we need products that, if those don't work, we have new ones kind of waiting, that sort of thing, like Jesus used to do, right? The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, putting 2 things together that you would normally put together. And I've seen groups do this as just kind of an opening exercise, just as a group building kind of brainstorming fun. But let's go ahead and do that here. So get your chat box ready. Somebody give me a piece of fruit, and just type the fruit into the chat. And I'm just the first one I see is the one we'll use. Okay, apple. How is your church like an apple? How is your congregation like an apple? And go ahead and type it in the chat. And just think about all the aspects of an apple and how yours is like that. There's some crab apples. Okay, good. Thanks, Ken. Crunchy. All right. Would love for David to say more about that. But yeah, old-fashioned variety. Okay, many varieties. Yep. They're core leaders. Okay, pulp is congregation. Skin, maybe those kind of people on the outside. Multicolored. Shiny on the outside. Oh, interesting. I always think about, like, apples need to be stored right, or they get really kind of mushy, or they get that mealy kind of thing. So how are we kind of creating the right environment for our apples to thrive? Yeah, seeds of growth. A couple people said that. All right, somebody give me a piece of furniture, a type of furniture. Shiny on the outside, but bruised under the skin. Ooh, Wayne, that's good. Okay, chair. How is the Presbyterian Church USA like a chair? How's the PCUSA like a chair? Comfortable. Okay. Too comfy. Well grounded, upright, needs all its legs to stand up. Okay, good, good. Yep, can't stand on one leg. Excellent. Needs all of the old-fashioned open. You can think about different kinds of chairs. So maybe if you were doing this with a group, you could say, okay, how is it like a recliner, or how is it like a bar stool? Those different things. And what this does is it just kind of primes people's creative thinking. It's also just a fun, playful activity that you can do with groups. Only one way to sit on it. Ooh, I like that. We could. And then when you find some that kind of intrigue you, you go, oh, say more about that. And some of them are just kind of one-off for fun. But putting things together that you wouldn't normally put together can sometimes really, get people thinking in a new way. So there are a few, I mean, there's tons and tons of other, and if you all have suggestions for how you've done kind of creative brainstorming or ideating time, please put them in chat, because there's tons of them out there. For me, the big thing is getting people out of their critical brain to say whether something's good or bad, and that evaluative judgment that we all make. So with that said, we're going to do one last round with our pairs or our trios. I'm going to give you a chance just in quiet here. You shared maybe some ideas with your partner, and now we're moving into prototype phase. So you need to pick one, and this is going to be your proposal for your partner. If we were together, there would be, imagine, and if you ever, this process is available online, and you could take groups through it. They have you do it in an hour. I think that's pretty fast. We've stretched it out over 3 hours with a lot of commentary from me, but they actually have you bring in a bunch of stuff. Like you've got twigs and you've got paper cups and you have all this stuff, and people actually build something that represents their solution. You all do not have the joy or the headache of doing that, depending on if you like doing that kind of crafty stuff. But that is part of the process, is just creating something that the person can interact with. So what I'm going to have you do, though, instead of making something, is just, based on what you heard in terms of feedback, pick the one kind of thing that you want to propose. Here's my invitation to you. Here is my offering to you, partner, that you might carry forward. And again, we're doing this as a creative exercise. We're receiving it in that spirit, but also offering it in that spirit. So I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to jot that down, pick which one you want to go with, and then we'll go into those groups one last time. And as you can see on your screen, this is the kind of feedback you're going to get. What worked, what could be improved, questions that the person has about your idea, and then just other ideas that you want to jot down. So this will be what we'll do. You're doing 8 now, and we'll do 9 in our groups. So just take a few minutes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say, here is my prototype. Here is my proposed prototype for you. And then, explain it. Let the person kind of try it on, and then get your feedback from that person. And that'll be the last time we'll be in those groups. So you can say thank you and goodbye to those folks. And then we'll do the last bit in the big group. So Mike, let's see, 12:34. Let's do 7 minutes in these groups. So you're going to have to get right to it. Again, don't defend your idea, just present it. Okay, and let it speak for itself. And then we will come back for the last little bit here. Quick final things for me about this stage. So let's go back to this. So what's fun about this, like I said, is these are not sort of distinct building blocks so much as they are kind of cycles that you go through. And when I think about my best kind of wisdom in putting together prototypes, which again, I think you all have been doing this for the last year. You've been experimenting, seeing what works, and you've had to, what's the cliche of the last year? Pivot, right? Where, if I never hear that word again, I'll be very happy. But the fact is, that's what we've been doing for the last year is kind of pivoting, or maybe not even pivoting, because that feels like a really radical movement, is sort of tweaking and refining. But when I think about prototype, a piece that can kind of help you is thinking about the MVP. The MVP is what's known as the minimum viable product. And this is a term that's borrowed from, I'm married to a software product manager. So they use a process called Agile software project management, which is kind of quick refinements and small pieces that you can put out in the market and let people work with and test. And maybe some of you all have done this. You've been beta testers for various software, right? You're testing it. You know it's not all going to work quite right, but the minimum amount that you can get out the door and get people interacting with is your prototype. So I'm thinking about this with a client that I'm working with who is, his church is kind of wondering whether he could keep doing the online worship kind of as it is, and also do a fully in-person service. And he's like, that feels like more than I can do right now. And also we don't quite know that that's what people want. But what the prototype is that he's going to be doing is a weekly prayer service in the evening that's 20, 25 minutes long. It's not the full, every service of the Lord's Day kind of element to it, but it is smaller. They're going to put it out there. It takes very little kind of work on his part, and they'll see if people like it. Is that what they want? And then they kind of, again, take them through the empathy cycle of does that meet our needs? Is that what it means to be church right now? Those kinds of things. So thinking about that minimum viable product. Fred, thanks for being here with us. In terms of testing, again, you're going to use some of the same tools that you used with the empathy process. Maybe doing the little journey map with people, thinking about the what, how, and why process. I noticed that people log in early to worship, but they need to leave early. We sort of get a drop off after the sermon. Like what can be going on there? What does that mean? Sort of those kinds of questions. Or as you move back to an in-person kind of reality, test those assumptions. So the testing stage and the empathy stage are really kind of the same in a lot of ways. You do a lot of the same work there. Another resource that I will recommend if you're not familiar with is called Cultivated Ministry, and it's being revised right now through Next Church, but it is a really powerful way of, normally we think about evaluation in terms of how much did it cost, how many people attended, that sort of attendance bucks in cash, or attendance buildings in cash, I guess is the way, or buildings bucks and butts is the other way we think about it, the numbers, the metrics. And cultivated ministry is a process of encouraging, thinking about the theology behind what we do. What is the so that of our ministry? Making sure there's really good accountability. Who's going to do what and when, and really holding people to that. Learning, what are we trying to learn from having this outdoor experience, for example? What do we want to learn from this prototype? How will we know that it did its job? And really developing some learning questions. And then storytelling. We know 10 people attended, but they had a life-changing experience. That's something you need to know in your testing phase. So that is the model in a nutshell. Let me just share a couple of quick resources with you because we are coming up to our time. The first thing that I'm sharing is I had a request for the sheets around the gift giving project. You can go to that link and there's a facilitator's guide. There is so let me just tell you what that is. So that's this piece, this one. So every time you had to do something in that simulation space, that is all spelled out for you. So if you wanted to teach your session or your teams a little bit about design thinking, it's all there for you. Everything else that I shared is from me, and I will share that with Mike so that he can have, he'll send out the slides to you. And then the other resource that I want to share is my email. I was just talking to Sue about this. As a speaker and a coach, I really want people, when I share things with them, to really be able to do something with it. And sometimes that takes a little more time. You need to kind of take it in, internalize it, and think about it. And so what I wanted to offer to this group of about 20, 26 of you, 25 of you, I have available in the next several weeks, I think, let's say 6 slots we'll do it first come, first serve. If you want a 30-minute, just kind of talk it through with me, and sort of say, how would I do this in my context, or just kind of thinking about what your next steps might be. If you really are feeling like this is something I want to do, but I don't know quite how yet, get in touch with me. There's my email. And we'll just schedule a 30-minute time just to kind of talk through, hey, here's what I'm thinking, and here's what's peculiar about my church. And I'll just put my coach hat on and help you kind of think about what comes next. So with that said, I'm going to go back to this slide and just say, here's where we've been. And I hope that there are some kind of sort of tools and ways of thinking about this work that that can give you a little bit of ground under your feet for the next phase you're in. I'm going to stop share there and just say, what questions do you have? What comments? And it would really help me to hear, because I'm always prototyping. This is a prototype. I've done this workshop in many ways, in different formats, and I'm, there's always a test. But what ideas are you taking with you in particular? What is, one or two kind of things that you heard today that you're really taking with you that are sticky, as they say? And feel free to type that in chat or just unmute yourself. That would be helpful to hear what those are. And might help others on this call too, to kind of do some summary. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, MaryAnn, I was kind of reflecting. So I've been kind of stumbling forward in our congregation in trying to do some of these things, but not having language or even a process. So it feels like the fog is somewhat lifted, and you can kind of see the landscape a little bit more clearly. And to have a little bit of a process laid out to say, okay, I can follow these steps, rather than trying to figure out, making it up, and then realizing, oh wait, we got to go back a few steps and then forward. Whether you want to use a fog metaphor, whether you want to use it's less herky jerky, going backwards and forwards, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing, whatever. But it feels helpful in saying, okay, here's the next right thing.
Good. Thanks, Nick. Other comments or questions, things you're still wondering about too, would be helpful.
MaryAnn, this is Deborah. We do,
Hi.
I teach design thinking at UVA, and one of the things that my partner today and I discovered is that sometimes, especially in the church, you skip the steps. You skip steps because you want to get to the outcome. And the beauty of this process is taking it slow and not trying to figure out what the outcome is going to be after you prototype and test before you actually do it. And I think if you were leading this in a church, that's what you would have to be very careful to say, well, now let's not figure out what the end result is. And one of the phrases I often use with my students is, if time and money were no object, what would you like to see our church do? Because sometimes we limit ourselves because we've already done the math and said, oh, we can't afford that. So anyway, that would be my piece of advice to people who try this process. Don't let people skip to the outcome without really doing the prototype and the test.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks, Deborah. I didn't know we had a bona fide expert on this call. But we're all, that's what's beautiful about, I think, this as again, it's a set of tools, but I also think of it as a sensibility. And really it's about curiosity, as you said, Deborah. It's about not presuming. And those of you who were on the improv call, you heard Stephen Colbert kind of talk about what yes and is all about. And he says, you have to be willing to be surprised and not think you've got it all figured out. And this is true of this as well. I think it's a really exciting time. I know it's been an exhausting time, but wow, what if a lot of things that we just took for granted can suddenly be opened up in a new way of what it means to be God's people in the church. Nick, I think the Designing Your Life is a great introduction to design, the book that I mentioned earlier, but there's tons online. And if you want, people, I need a good standard answer. And Deborah, I don't know if you have an answer of like people who like to learn through reading, if there's a book or a, do you have anything that you use or recommend?
We use Designing Your Life, because it's not a textbook. It's got a lot of exercises and things in it. So it's perfect. I would highly recommend it.
Mhm.
Good.
Well, yeah, and even like web resources, right? Because sometimes instead of like spending a bunch of time going down the rabbit hole of like, is this not?
Yeah.
Right. Where's the good first steps to start with?
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do is I just shared one with somebody and I'm going to post. Actually, you know what I'll do? So I don't want to waste spend our time doing that. I will make sure that's in the list of things that I share with Mike, along with the slides for this. There's one article that I think is particularly good. And it really gets at the kind of cyclical nature of like, you may be in prototype and test for a while, but that's going to be very empathy inflected, right? Because you're going to want to, the whole point of testing is figuring out, how does this feel to people? Other questions or comments? Yeah.
If I could comment on Deborah's first statement about shortcutting. I was an intentional interim pastor for 25 years. And I only know only one church out of 11 that I served did not, in my opinion, shortcut the process of doing their mission study and truly trying to determine what God was calling them to do, and especially in terms of to their community at that time. So I would be really encouraging to all of the pastors here to try and really not let that shortcutting happen, whether it's in vision planning or whether it's as an interim or whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I saw Janelle. Did you want to chime in?
No, just thank you so much for that. I just wanted to get the author for the Designing Your Life.
Yes. Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. They are two of the kind of gurus of design. What I like about that book as a, I want to read that because that's so important. The other important thing to remember is that once you prototype and test and you discover it didn't really fit, that is not a failure. That is the process working itself out. So part of this is also normalizing that with people. But what I wanted to say about the book, a lot of, I don't even know whether it's fair to call that self-help, but like books that fall into that kind of category can be very, just sort of pie in the sky and very steeped in privilege and kind of, you can be anything you want to be kind of thing. And what I like about design in general, but also that book is, there's some of that, I guess, but not really, because it's like, how do you work with life as it really is? Like what's really happening in your life and what you really care about. And the sky isn't the limit. In a kind of way of thinking, like I said, this idea of wicked problems, there are just things that are kind of always sort of with us. The other thing I will say while we're on that topic is, I was sharing this with a cohort group that had a man in it who was a pastor, and he's a gay man. And he said, for a long time, we thought that it was just a gravity thing, that we would not be able to be ordained in this denomination, and so even the things we deem as gravity, even those can shift. But he said, but what it took was redefining what we were trying to do, not to sort of change the denomination, but to do what was faithful for us as individuals, for me in my context. And so it really almost had a little bit of a design element to it, but it was like, I can't go into it thinking I'm going to change everything. I need to change what is within my capacity to change.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Anyway. Well, I thank you all. And again, Janelle, did you have, I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that was fine. I just wanted to thank you for the day. I leave feeling like I have, been empowered and have some tools to be able to work with as we're thinking in our own context about where do we go from here. This hopefully post-pandemic. Yes. Thank
Yes,
you.
hopefully. Well,
Yes.
blessings to all of you. And again, feel free to be in touch. My email is there if you want to have a little follow-up with me. I would love to do that, and it will help me make these experiences better for future people. So it helps me out as well to be able to do that. And let me just give you a blessing. Mike or Sue, do you have anything you need to say to these folks? And then we'll bless them and send them.
Nope, you are welcome to close us out. We'll get them information about the session by email soon.
Great. Yes, I'll send everything along to Mike quickly. Well, I'll just share the Franciscan blessing, which I love to use, and got it from Eugenia Gamble. If you all know that wonderful PCUSA pastor, but she says, as we go from here, may God bless you with discomfort, at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you will live deeply and from the heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and the exploitation of people, so that you will work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who mourn, so that you will reach out your hand to them and turn mourning into joy. And may God bless us with just enough foolishness to believe that we can make a difference in this world, so that we will do what others say cannot be done. And may we go from here knowing that the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the communion of the Holy Spirit go with us now and forevermore. And I will share that blessing in my resources as well. Blessings to all of you. Thank you so much for what you all are doing for your churches and for all of us. Thank you, and thanks for your time today, and hope to be in touch.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bye.